You're listening to Milwaukee Mafia, your weekly podcast dose of Wisconsin Mafia and true crime history.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Milwaukee Mafia podcast. This is our first episode, first story. I'm Eric Wulterkens, and I have Gavin Schmitt with me.
Yo.
And we're going to just jump right into the story. So Gavin, if you want to get started, and I'll just chime in when I feel like it.
Yeah, definitely stop me at any point. So what we're going to do for our very first episode is talk about something that's not the Mafia. How about that?
No, that's great.
I know. Now, we're going to kind of set the stage. This is the story of the 3rd Ward fire. And the 3rd Ward was, well, it still is, but it was an area in Milwaukee. It's kind of more or less where the Summerfest grounds are. It's just south of the freeway that goes through downtown. And so you got to imagine way back when Milwaukee was just being settled. This area of Milwaukee was all swampy. It was flat. It was not an area that the original settlers of Milwaukee wanted to live in. But they drained the land. Some land prospectors were building there. And the next big ethnic group to move in, they started selling them plots of land. And the next big ethnic group to move in was the Irish.
Okay.
So the Irish are coming in. They're building their houses. They're building their warehouses. They're doing what they can do to kind of make a home for themselves. John Gerda, who is probably the foremost historian on Milwaukee, he says, quote, "It was filled in with Irish labor and covered with Irish housing as soon as the muck was dry." It also gained a reputation as the Bloody Third. This reputation was because apparently the Irish would frequently get drunk and engage in fist fights. I don't know if this is true or if this is what other people thought of them.
It does sound like an Irish thing to do, right?
It does sound
Sorry
like
to anybody out there that's Irish, but...
Yeah. I mean, some of the stereotypes, they exist for a reason. So.
Yeah. There's got to be a little bit of truth to them.
So originally, the 3rd Ward of Milwaukee was settled by the Irish. They went through a few tragedies while they were living there. The first big one was way back in 1860. It was a steamship called the Lady Elgin. I don't know much about shipping and shipwrecks and that sort of thing. I know a lot of people do. That's not really my thing. But maybe if you're familiar with that, you've heard of the Lady Elgin because it was a passenger ship that ended up sinking in the Great Lakes. 400 people died, most of them Irish. It is the second greatest loss of life on the Great Lakes. I don't know what the first is.
Oh, that will come in a later episode.
Maybe it'll come in a later episode. I don't know. Is it Edmund Fitzgerald? I don't know.
You are looking at the wrong guy here. I don't know anything.
You don't know about shipwrecks?
No, I don't know about shipwrecks.
Okay, all right. Well, that was the first major tragedy. 400 Irish people lost in a shipwreck. But the thing that we're here to talk about today is the 3rd Ward fire, which is the other major thing. This is in 1892. So this fire breaks out. It's about 5:30 in the evening. The building that it starts in is the Union Oil Company, which, as you can imagine, there's oil in there. Yeah, not a place you want to have fire. So by sheer coincidence, there's already 3 other fires going on in the city. The fire engines are out there. They're at these other fires. So they don't get to Union Oil immediately. It takes them maybe 15 minutes to get there, which is a long time when it's oil burning.
And you said this was in 1891?
1892.
1892?
1892.
Do you know, I'm just curious, like just an idea of how big was Milwaukee in 1892?
I could not give you an exact population, but it's honestly not much.
And so I'm assuming like 3 fires at one time would be a huge thing, you would assume.
It is a huge thing. I mean, in the 1890s, Milwaukee would still be probably the biggest city in the state, but I mean, not by much. It would be comparable to Green Bay.
Okay.
So it's not the Milwaukee we know today. It's still very much a growing city. So yeah, three fires at once. They'd be kept pretty busy.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, these fires are going off, and the oil is burning, and flames are shooting out. There's explosions going off because oil barrels don't like being on fire. So these things are happening, and they finally get to the fire. They think that they've put out the fire, so they're getting ready to go back home, and no. The wind picks up. The fire ends up jumping onto other buildings.
Oh, my God.
Yep. So the next door is on fire. It's a wholesale drug supplier that had started burning down. Flames are shooting out, smoke is shooting out, the wind is blowing the smoke all over town. You can see this from miles away. And it ends up jumping again and again and again to more and more buildings. And they say that at the peak, I don't know if this is true, but they say at the peak you could see it glowing in the sky as far away as Sheboygan or Waukegan.
Wow.
Yeah. So might be a little bit of exaggeration on the newspaper's part, but definitely, I mean, the biggest fire in Milwaukee history. So,
and I guess we should probably preface this, if somebody is listening that's not really familiar with Wisconsin.
Sure.
That directional being Waukegan would be what, maybe
South.
an hour and a half away.
Oh,
and
is it even that much? I don't know. Maybe.
Probably.
Okay.
Well, maybe an hour.
Yeah, I'd say
an hour.
Yeah.
But then Sheboygan, probably the same.
About an hour north, yeah.
Yeah. So just to give you an idea of what kind of distance we're talking about.
Yeah, it's a significant distance. So yeah, these more and more buildings are burning. A lot of companies that no longer exist that wouldn't mean too much. One of them was Roundy's, which I think we still have a Roundy's.
We kind of still have a Roundy's. They're Kroger's now, but yeah, they pretty much exist.
So the Roundy's in the area was burning. So that's over 100 and some years ago that Roundy's was around. More and more companies are burning. There's warehouses and other houses and other fire going on. It gets going further. It's 9:30, so this is almost 4 hours later. It hits the Milwaukee Gas Company. The Milwaukee Gas Company bursts into flames, and a lot of houses were run off of gas at this point. Electricity really hadn't taken off. So when the Milwaukee Gas Company starts burning, suddenly, now there's power outages throughout the city. So even if you're not on fire, your power's going out. So it's affecting a lot of people. So that's great. They do finally get it under control, of course. Milwaukee's not still burning right now. So they finally got it under control. It was estimated the total damage was $4 million. That's $4 million at that time.
Holy
not
cow.
this time. Included the complete destruction of 215 railroad cars, freight cars, 440 buildings. Somewhere between 1,900 and 2,500 people lost their houses. So that's 2,500 Irish people who now have to find new homes. Luckily, only 5 people died in all that.
Wow. That's quite impressive, actually.
Yeah, 2 firemen lost their lives. A third man lost his life when a building fell on top of him in the middle of it. And 2 women apparently had heart attacks. You would think with all these, 440 buildings, you'd think there'd be people trapped in these buildings, but apparently the people got out okay.
Well, that's good. That's good.
Yeah. So yeah, like I said, you could see this as far away as Waukegan or Sheboygan. People were going to see these. This was kind of like the event of the season. You want to go see this fire.
So I imagine this is like a fireworks show? There's people sitting around watching the city burn?
Yeah, very much so. Now again, this is the newspaper, and this may be an exaggeration, but they said that pretty much the only people in the city who didn't come out to watch this were infants, because they're infants, they're not going to leave their crib, and people in jail. They said if you weren't in jail and you weren't a baby, you probably were out sitting in your front yard watching this happen.
This is crazy. I'm assuming this must have been in an area where at that point in time they didn't have a lot of... Well, you said there was a ton of houses burned down, though.
Yeah.
So that's just amazing that there's so few deaths.
Yeah, I don't really get it. I mean, I don't know if that's a miracle or what, but yes, apparently people got out okay.
Good. So now the obvious question for this is...
Yes.
How does this all tie into the mafia?
Thank you. I know, right? What?
I'm waiting for it.
You're waiting for it.
And it's just not coming, so now I got to ask the question.
All right. So, and we're actually to that point in the story. So you ask at just the right time. Yeah. So this is the Irish community. The Irish community is moving out. They have either the choice to rebuild or to move, and the majority of them choose to move because the rebuilding is just too expensive. New housing costs too much. There wasn't a lot of insurance, so people weren't getting paid out for this. So they move out. Now, what happens is when they move out, this is now back how it was when the Irish moved in. They moved in because it was the swampy, crappy part of town. And now it's not swampy anymore, but it's burned down. So it's a pretty crappy part of town. And in the 1890s, that's when the Italians start moving into the United States. So the Italians who moved into Milwaukee, they end up getting houses in the Third Ward again. So the reason that the Italian community really settled in the Third Ward was because of this fire. So now today, if anybody thinks of the Italian community, they think of the Third Ward. That's where the Italian Community Center is. But it was an Irish place originally, but until the fire scared everyone out. So that's what kind of caused this flip from Irish to Italian. And they grew up there on streets. It was Detroit Street, Chicago Street, Erie Street, if you're familiar with any of these names. And they took over businesses. They started what was called Commission Row in the area, which is on Broadway. Commission Row is just a bunch of grocery businesses. They would go out in front of these warehouses with their produce and stuff and sell it off. By 1915, the area has 29 Italian taverns, 45 Italian groceries, an Italian bank, 2 spaghetti factories, because of course, again, you're going to have a spaghetti factory if it's the Italian neighborhood, but they have 2.
So they did a pretty good job rebuilding it, I guess.
They did. They really did. So yeah, this got to be a major Italian community. And kind of a funny little footnote is the church they started there was the Blessed Virgin of Pompeii, a Catholic church. It was commonly known as the Little Pink Church. That's what they called it. It was declared Milwaukee's very first architectural landmark in 1967. And that very same year, they tore it down. They tore it down. The city came in, and a lot of what was original. Well, I shouldn't say original because the original burned down, but the original Italian Third Ward ended up getting torn out when they expanded and put in the I-794 freeway.
Okay.
So they ended up again. People got displaced, and the Italians moved on to other neighborhoods, but.
So today, a lot of this history doesn't even exist anymore.
It doesn't.
It's a freaking highway.
Yeah, some of it's still there. Some of the streets are still there, but yeah, pretty much none of the original houses are there anymore. And a lot of these warehouses have been converted into fancy condos. It's once again become this new neighborhood, except it's really nice this time. Yeah, the Third Ward is it's a trendy neighborhood now. So.
What is in the Third Ward now? Is there something that would be there that I would know? Chicago Avenue sounds familiar to me, but I'm trying to think where that is.
Yeah, I don't know what would stand out. Again, like I said, it's kind of by the Summerfest grounds.
Yeah, okay.
So if you're on 794, you get off on Michigan Avenue to go to Summerfest. That's where you are.
Okay.
I don't know what you would go to the Third Ward specifically for. Yeah. If you didn't live there. So, I don't know. But Summerfest is the easiest way for me to describe the area today.
Cool.
Yeah. What other questions do you have?
Well, okay. So, I guess I can ask a lot of questions, but I'm afraid that they're going to digress into something you might be covering later. But I guess
if your question's too big, we'll just table it until a future episode.
Okay, so you've got this community. The Italian community comes in and starts settling in this area. Are we gonna I'm assuming that all these people that came in here from all these Italians were not from the mafia.
No.
I believe.
No, and we should make that clear very early on. No, 99% of them are perfectly fine people.
So yeah. Is it another episode where we learn what who settles here and becomes the mafia, or how these Italians start to develop this mafia? Can you speak a little bit to that? Or
let's save that one a little bit. I really just want to kind of set up why this was the area they settled in, which, in the beginning I used that I'm where is this going? But there was a reason.
Yeah.
There was a reason I wanted to start here. But yeah, let's get into that, what differentiates the mainstream from, let's separate that for now.
Okay. We're going to save that for a future episode.
Sure.
Bad question, I guess.
No, not a bad question. You're just setting up future episodes. That's a good question.
So, I don't really think I have any other questions at this point in time.
Okay.
So, hit them with your contact information.
Sure. You can email MilwaukeeMafia@gmail.com. You can go to MilwaukeeMafia.com and find all the great things there. Or you can go to Facebook.com/Milwaukee Mafia, which I post to pretty regularly, and you can message me there.
Cool. And Patreon.com/Milwaukee Mafia. And as always, please, if you enjoy this podcast, leave us a rating on your favorite podcast player. And we will be back in 2 weeks with a new free episode.
Yep.
And stay tuned. Join the Patreon and you'll have an episode for you. So thanks, everybody, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
All right. Have a good night.
Thanks for tuning in to the Milwaukee Mafia podcast. Join us next week for another look back at Wisconsin Mafia and true crime history.